You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today we have a true honor talking to our special guest for today. We're going to talk to the one and only Brea Mojica, and she is not just an author, educator, and parent. She is also someone who provides tools to inspire, entertain, and educate our youth. And for today's topic, we're going to talk about why should anyone not just care about history, but learn it and understand it. So without further ado, I just want to welcome you, Barbara, to the show and say how you doing.
Thank you so much, Shamaya, and I'm very happy to be here and talk with your listeners today.
So before we get into today's topic, man, tell the audience first a little bit about yourself and how you became an educator.
Okay, I grew up in Queens, right on the border between Brooklyn and Queens in New York City. I grew up in a relatively poor family. Both of my parents were very good in terms of wanting me to get a good education, but neither of my parents finished high school. I was, however, always driven by curiosity and a love of finding out about different people and different places. So I was driven to want to learn. And I spent my whole life trying to learn something new every day. But history especially appealed to me because I wasn't able to do a lot of traveling or exploring on my own. My parents didn't have a car, and we didn't really get to go to that many places while I was growing up. But I had a love of, just wanting to see everything in the world and how it worked and how different people lived different kinds of lives. So I focused a lot on history, and I was interested in people of the past, but I also saw the connection between people of the past and the way we live today, and the way that history helps us to learn about how we can make things better in the future. So that's the route I took, and I worked very hard. I got myself through college and then through graduate school. But when I finished college, even though I still really loved history, I wanted to work with people. I didn't want to become a historian in the sense of doing research 99% of the time and not connecting with the real world. So I started teaching children, and I loved young children. So I began working with them. And I stayed with that for a very long time. And eventually, I became aware that there were a lot of children in our education system whose needs were not being met. So I went into special education, and for many years, I worked with children of special needs. But once I retired from my formal education career, which is approximately 40 years long, since the age of 20, I started teaching, I decided I wanted to go back to my love of history again and combine it with my love of teaching. So I began to write a series of children's books, and my mission was to make learning about history something that was entertaining and inspiring, and at the same time, helping children to become the leaders of tomorrow.
And with that said, why is it so important for people not just to learn, but also for the next generation and just people in general to care about the history?
Okay, so what is history? Most people, when they see the word history, they look at it and they say, oh, it has the word story in it. So part of history is a story because it does tell about the lives of people and places and events. But the word history also comes from the Greek, and the word in Greek means to look into or to seek, to inquire, to know about. And for me, that's the real meaning of history, because I feel that all of us, in order to know where we are today and where we're going to be in the future, we need to know where we came from. And history is a part of every one of us. I believe that the day we're born, we become a character in history. We all create our own history, and history links us to our families. What's our first experience? Our first experience is learning to be a part of a family, and our families are wrapped up in memories. So we learn about our ancestors, the people who came before us, the traditions that they passed down to us, our culture and the way we live. And then eventually we learn that not only are we part of a family, but we're part of a larger community. And communities are groups of people that come together because they have common stories, common traditions, common cultural events that they share, common ways of working together and earning a living. So we get an identity with our community, and then hopefully we become engaged citizens in our community. If we study history, we are able to use what we learned from the past, some of which might be good, some of which might be bad, things that work, things that didn't work. And we can come up with new perspectives. And we have a kind of a legacy or a role model to help us to change and to use what we've learned from our past by studying documents, artifacts, images, and the stories of people from the past to build a better future. So I think if we want to know where we're going, we have to know where we came from, how we can use that to live a better life today, and then how we can plan to use all of that knowledge to build a better future for everyone.
Once again, listen to I'm Refocused Radio, talking to our special guest for today, Brea Mojica. And you also, I mentioned in the intro that you're an author, and you have an award-winning series project called Little Miss History and Travels Too. Little Miss History Travels Too. And it's a 14-part series. Tell us a little bit about that project and how that ties up with everything you're talking about today.
Well, Little Miss History is a character that my illustrator created. My illustrator is also my husband, who has been drawing since the age of 5. And he created this character because I wanted to make my history series fun and entertaining. I wanted children who were reading it to identify, to see themselves as a part of learning through these historical experiences. So Little Miss History is a character who's based on a younger version of me. She wears kind of a camping or national park hiking outfit. I used to hike and do a lot of exploring, both through the mountains and in local cultures. So she wears that kind of an outfit. She has pigtails like I used to wear when I was a teenager. She has these huge hiking boots, and the hiking boots are in memory of my father's feet. So again, they're part of my family and history and my traditions. And she wears these huge sunglasses that are rose colored because she has an optimistic view of the world. And she's always looking on the bright side of things. So that's the character. And the character just narrates the series. So the history series is thoroughly researched. And the character also helps children visualize through multimedia. So not only do I have the character, Little Miss History, narrating the series, but I have photographs because I visit all of the sites, well, 99% of them. There is some exception. I did not go to the North Pole, and I do have a book on the North Pole. But in most cases, the sites have pictures that we took at the actual site. And also included with the books are portraits, hand-drawn portraits of some of the characters and the experiences that are talked about in the book. And some of them are iconic places that would be familiar to most people, like the Statue of Liberty or the Mount Rushmore. Others are a little bit more unfamiliar. Some of them are national parks, like Sequoia National Park. I have one book on La Brea Tar Pits. That one goes all the way back to prehistory, and it examines the ancient fossils that were found in the La Brea Tar Pits and are now displayed in the museum. The book on the North Pole that I mentioned talks about the history of the exploration of the North Pole. It talks about the territories that claim land in the Arctic area. There are 8 countries that are involved, and I talk about the different countries, a little bit about their traditions and history. I also talk about, of course, Santa Claus, the how the whole idea of Santa Claus evolved and came about, and how it changed throughout time. I have books on military history, like the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum and the Battleship Iowa. Those books are more in tune with the world history. Um, they talk about the World Wars, the Cold War, the characters who sometimes were forgotten during history. I talk about people that were sometimes left out of history, like Alonzo Swan and Matthew Henson. And I bring issues to the forefront that I think children should be thinking about as critical thinkers and future leaders. I ask them questions like, what do they think about Mount Rushmore and the land being taken from the Lakota Sioux? And what do they think about the Crazy Horse Memorial, that the Native Americans are now building their own memorial near Mount Rushmore? And I talk to children about environment. So I talk to them about the pollution in national parks and how Sequoia National Park is one of the most beautiful parks with the tall sequoia trees that are thousands of years old. Yet at the same time, it is one of the most polluted places in the world. And the San Joaquin Valley is very polluted. I talk to them about pollution. Can they think of ways to solve some of these problems? So I talk to them about things like uh, rights of indigenous peoples, problems in the environment. I talk to them about science in some of my books. So they talk about history, but they also involve a lot of other disciplines and issues as well.
And speaking of solving problems, what are some of the problems in the educational system in today's world, today's time, that we
Well,
can identify and solve?
there are so many problems in our educational system today. I think that we have to focus more on teaching children how to think rather than what to think. Here in the United States, at least, there's a big focus on the standardized curriculum, the Common Core, and all children are expected to meet common standards and to take so many standardized tests. And there are so many issues with that because we have so many diverse populations in the United States with so many different needs. We have different languages, we have different economic conditions, we have children that come from so many different cultures and have so many different ways of learning and doing things. And we try to fit them into this mold of all having to fit a certain pattern and learn a certain way. So that's a big problem. I think we have to teach children critical thinking skills along with learning the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why. We have to teach them things like curiosity and finding alternative solutions. We have to teach them that we need to look on the bright side of things, to have compassion for people, to know that things are not always negative. We can always find uh, a way of changing and improving things. We need to encourage children to be bold and to try new things, to discover their own passions. And if they don't succeed right away, that's okay. They can try again. They uh, they can always be curious. They can also do something else. We're not locked into these rigid kind of patterns. As long as we look at things and we're not trying to be uh, looking at them from an egocentric point of view, that we understand that we can't be looking things in terms of social thinking. I think social media is a big problem. Children today are so wrapped up in social media, and they don't learn to really stop and think and examine things from a multi perspective point of view. They're more concerned with what their friends think, and will they be accepted if they say something different from their friends. Again, they want to fit in. There's like such a a group think, a social thinking kind of mindset. And I think we have to teach children that it's okay to stop and think and talk about issues without coming to a snap judgment and making a rash decision based on a certain uh, group that we tend to associate with, whether that be a political group or a religious group or just the kind of group that they happen to hang out with at one time. Because as they grow and change, their lives are going to constantly be evolving, and I think they have to expose themselves to you know, multiple points of view, people, uh, and that's what I mean by trying new things, discovering new passions, and always looking for different types of connections and different viewpoints.
Once again, listen to I Am Refocused Radio, talking to Barbara Mojica. And also today, we've been talking about the topic, why we need to learn and understand history. And you talked about social media. And that's a good take when you are encouraging parents to help teach their children to recognize facts and opinions on social media. How important is it for the next generation, just young people, period? It can be up to, our mid 20s, maybe even 30s with how we looked at social media. How important is it for all of us to kind of understand and have the ability to separate facts from opinions?
Well, again, that's something that is difficult today because we are not presented with objective news today. It used to be that you could turn on a television or listen to the radio or look at a newspaper and more or less get the facts of an event or something that happened, and then you could read them and you could think about it and you could make a judgment for yourself. Now today, when we get news, it tends to be filtered. So we don't turn on the television and get news. We get a presentation, and then we get a panel of journalists who discuss the news. And depending on which news outlet you listen to, you will get a certain slant, you will get a certain bias. And it's important for parents to teach children that when you look or listen to news, you have to be very, very careful to check for bias. Is is that event or person or whatever the story might be presented in a skewed way? If they looked at one story and they observed or read about the story in two different news outlets, or they turned to two different television channels, they might be given a totally different perspective based on who is reporting that story. So I think parents have to be very careful, uh, both in their own uh, lives when they talk with children. Again, and then this of course is different according to the age of the child. When they talk to the child, they have to be careful not to skew with with their own opinion. They have to teach children that an opinion is a person's way of thinking about a particular issue, but it is not necessarily right or wrong. That facts are things that can be proven to be true. And I have a video on my YouTube channel that talks about the difference between facts and opinion. And I did a mini lesson for children to show them the differences. But parents have to be careful to help children understand that not everything that they see and not everything that they hear is a fact, and it's not necessarily true. You know, you can give them an example. A horse has four legs. That's a fact. But horses are better than dogs. That's an opinion. And, you know, we have to show them that there is a difference. So if we help children to understand that they have to think for themselves and they have to learn that there are things that are just opinions, and it might, you might have the totally opposite opinion from your friend, and that's okay. But if it's something that is a fact, then that's something that cannot be changed. You know, it has to be understood. And of course, that should be taught in schools as well. But today we do have, unfortunately, in some schools, uh, whether it be administration or teachers, who present one point of view, and they don't allow children to make judgments for themselves. Their children are just getting one side of the story. And that became evident recently, of course, during COVID, when parents became a lot more aware of what children were actually learning online. And some of them became very upset with what they perceived their children to be learning, because they saw it as something that was either contradicting or not totally in line with their views. So I think all parents are first teachers. And a parent is a child's first and most important teacher. And the parents have to take an active role in education. And not all children learn well with the same type of education. So I think parents have to be aware of the way their child learns best and put their child in that situation, whether it be homeschooling or the public school or a charter school, or a cooperative learning kind of setting, or a special needs program for children who have very, very detailed types of special needs. And it's best for a child to learn in the situation that suits their learning style. So parents have to be very active in that. And a lot of parents became a lot more aware of that when they became more uh, acquainted with exactly the type of teaching that was going on with their particular child and that particular school setting.
Once again, listen to I'm Focus Radio, talking to Brea Tar Mojica. You can go to her website for her book, littlemisshistory.com. Once again, that's littlemisshistory.com. And before we wrap up, one last question. You mentioned earlier in the interview about a person's role and responsibility as a character in history. You referenced once you're born, you're the character now playing your role in history. You're making it every day. So what is each person's role and responsibility?
Each person's role is, well, it is unique to their family, their culture, their community. Each person has a responsibility to be a responsible citizen. I think each person should learn about their community, their family history, and parents can teach about their family very easily. They can take care to tell stories about their family's history, their ancestry, if they came from another country, the country from which they came, incorporate the customs of that country, the traditions, the foods, the type of celebrations that they have. And in their community, they can take a child out into the local community and they can ask the child, oh, I wonder, did you ever think about who lived in that building? Did you ever think what they did to earn a living in that building? Did you ever think about the way this place looked like 100 years ago? Or did you ever think about the way it's going to look 100 years in the future? And then you can teach them to be responsible citizens. If there's a problem in their community, ask them, what do you think we should do to fix that? Oh, that building uh, needs some work, or that bridge doesn't look like it's in very good condition. What do you think people should do to come together in the community to change that? How do you think we could make it better? Uh, and how do you think you would do it if you were in charge? What would be your solution? What are some ideas that you have? So critical thinking, again, asking them to analyze, to observe things, to take pictures, to maybe make a scrapbook of their family, make a recording, go out and interview people in the community. There are a lot of ways to get children to uh, become actively involved in their space and their family and their local community and even their country. So, but just by making them aware, I wonder, those two words can do a lot to get children thinking and to develop their critical thinking skills.
Once again, listen to Army Focus Radio, talking to Brea Tar Mojica. You can go, make sure you get the book, 14 Reasons Why You Need History. Go visit the website, littlemisshistory.com. I want to say thank you, Barbara, for taking time your busy schedule to talk to us. But with you having the last words, what would you like to tell our audience?
Well, I'd like to leave you with the words of my character, Little Miss History. If you don't know your history, you don't know what you're talking about.
Once again, thank you for taking time. Brea Tar Mojica, you can go to her website to get the book, littlemisshistory.com. Thank you again for joining Army Focus Radio today.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk with you.
I Am Refocused Radio is brought to you by Foo 4 Star and Holy Crab. Foo 4 Star is a family-owned Asian restaurant in San Antonio, Texas. We have been a local favorite for Asian cuisine for over 10 years. With nothing but full smiles and fast service, you'll be leaving satisfied. Come on in for some authentic Vietnamese food. Holy Crab is one-of-a-kind Cajun Creole-style seafood restaurant located in Universal City, Texas. We offer traditional seafood items as well as chicken and steak. We also offer seafood boils. Come give us a try, you won't be disappointed. You can find these two eateries in Universal City, Texas at 2921 Pat Booker Road.